Males of Reddit. What's your creepy girl story? Story 1. So this girl in my chemistry class started collecting my hair. Not kidding. I noticed her sitting behind me and sometimes I'd feel this weird tugging sensation. Thought it was just my imagination until my lab partner pointed it out. She was literally plucking strands of my hair when I wasn't looking. Turns out she had been collecting them in this little baggie in her backpack. When confronted, she got all defensive and said she was keeping a piece of me close. I immediately requested a seat change and avoided her for the rest of the semester. Still gives me the creeps thinking about what else she might have been planning to do with that hair. Story 2. Alright, so this is probably the most screwed up thing that's ever happened to me. I was 19, living in a college town, and this girl Melissa started hanging around our friend group. She was maybe 24 or 25, which seemed cool at the time because she could buy drinks for everyone. One night after a party at my apartment, I woke up around 6 a.m. feeling terrible. I'd had way too much to drink the night before and honestly couldn't remember much after midnight. But when I opened my eyes, Melissa was sitting on my bed fully dressed, just watching me sleep. I was completely naked under the covers and had no memory of anything happening. She started talking about how amazing our night together was and how she couldn't wait to do it again. I was completely confused because I genuinely had no recollection of anything happening between us. When I tried to politely say I didn't remember and that I'd probably been too drunk, she got this weird smile and said that's okay, I remember everything. Over the next few weeks, she became super clingy and possessive. She'd show up at my work, follow me to classes, and constantly text me. When I finally told her I wasn't interested in dating her, she completely lost it. She started telling people we were in a relationship and that I'd been using her for her body. But here's where it gets really messed up. About a month later, she claimed she was pregnant and demanded I give her money for medical expenses. She wanted like $800 and said if I didn't pay, she'd tell everyone I'd forced myself on her that night. I was terrified because I honestly couldn't remember what happened. I ended up borrowing money from my parents and giving it to her, even though something felt really wrong about the whole situation. A few months later, I found out through mutual friends that she'd pulled similar stuff with at least 2 other guys in our social circle. Same pattern, getting them really drunk, claiming pregnancy, demanding money. Looking back, I'm pretty sure she took advantage of me that night when I was blackout drunk. But as a guy, who was I supposed to tell? Nobody would have believed me anyway. Story 3. This is probably the most unsettling experience I've had with someone who couldn't take a hint. I met this girl during freshman orientation at college, and we ended up in a few of the same general education classes. She was friendly enough, but I noticed she had this intensity about her that made me uncomfortable. She'd save seats for me in lecture halls, even when I'd told her I preferred sitting alone to focus better. When I'd show up and sit somewhere else, she'd move to be near me, bringing all her stuff and disrupting other students. Professors started noticing because she'd create these little commotions trying to relocate. What really freaked me out was how she started mimicking my routines. I'd go to the library at specific times to study, and suddenly she'd be there too, always choosing a table where she could see me. When I'd change locations, she'd pack up and follow. I started studying in my dorm just to avoid her. She somehow got my phone number and would text me constantly. Random things like thinking of you or photos of her meals with messages about how she wished we could eat together. When I stopped responding, she'd send longer messages about how hurt she was that I was ignoring her and how she just wanted to be close to me. The situation escalated when she started showing up at events I'd mentioned to other people. If I told a classmate I was going to a campus movie night, she'd somehow find out and appear there. She'd act surprised to see me, like it was this amazing coincidence, but it happened way too often to be random. Things got really bad when I started dating someone seriously. She'd accidentally run into us around campus, making awkward small talk and asking personal questions about our relationship. My girlfriend started feeling uncomfortable about how this girl would just stare at us when she thought we weren't looking. The final straw was when she left a handwritten letter under my dorm room door. It was pages long, talking about how she'd been waiting for me to realize that we were meant to be together and how my girlfriend was just a distraction from our destiny. She'd kept track of details about my life that I'd never shared with her directly, stuff she must have gathered from eavesdropping on my conversations or following me around. I had to go to campus security at that point. They talked to her, and she finally backed off, but I heard from friends that she transferred schools the next semester. Really hope she got help, because that level of obsession isn't healthy for anyone involved. Story 4. So this happened at my buddy's 21st birthday party about 3 years ago. We were all having a great time, drinking, playing beer pong, the usual college stuff. This girl Sarah showed up with some mutual friends even though she wasn't really invited. She seemed cool at first, just hanging around, but I noticed she kept trying to get the birthday boy super messed up. She was constantly bringing him shots and encouraging him to drink way more than he could handle. Around 2 a.m., most people had left and my friend was completely passed out on his couch. I was crashing in the guest room when I heard weird noises coming from the living room. When I went to check, I found Sarah on top of my friend who was still completely unconscious. I totally freaked out and told her to get off him immediately. She acted like nothing was wrong and said he wanted it even though he was clearly not conscious. I woke up my friend and she bolted out of there without saying anything. The next morning my buddy barely remembered anything from the night, but he was really shaken up when I told him what happened. A few days later, Sarah started texting him saying she might be pregnant and needed money for Plan B. That's when we realized this was probably planned. We ended up blocking her on everything and warning our other friends about her behavior. It's messed up because if the genders were flipped, everyone would immediately recognize this as assault. But when it's a guy victim, people act like he should be grateful or something. My friend never reported it because he said no one would take it seriously anyway. Still makes me angry thinking about it. Story 5. This happened during my college years. I was working late at this diner job I had and this girl came in right before closing. She ordered just coffee but sat there for like 2 hours. When I was cleaning up, she started talking to me and seemed really sweet. Said she was new in town and didn't know many people. She asked if I knew any good places to hang out and I mentioned a few bars and restaurants. Then she asked if I wanted to show her around sometime. I said sure and gave her my number. The next day she texts asking if I can pick her up because her car broke down. I figure it's a good excuse to hang out, so I agree. When I get to her place, she comes out with this huge bag and says she needs to stop at the bank first. Then the grocery store. Then to drop something off at her ex-boyfriend's place. I'm starting to feel like I'm being used, but she keeps apologizing and saying her car will be fixed soon. We finally get to this restaurant and she orders a bunch of food. Then when the check comes she realizes she forgot her wallet in my car. Of course it's not there when we go look. I end up paying for everything and she promises to pay me back. Never happened. But the text kept coming asking for more rides, money for car repairs, help moving stuff. Always some sob story about why she needed help. The final straw was when she asked me to co-sign for an apartment because her credit was bad. That's when I realized this girl was just looking for people to take advantage of. Blocked her number and never heard from her again. Learned a valuable lesson about people who immediately start asking for favors when you barely know them. Story 6. This happened during my senior year of high school, so I was 17. I'd been casually hanging out with this girl Rachel who was a year younger. We weren't officially dating or anything, just friends who sometimes went to movies together and talked a lot online. Rachel was really artistic and creative, always drawing or writing poetry. At first I thought it was cool that she was so expressive. She'd show me her artwork sometimes, and it was actually pretty good. Nothing seemed weird about it initially. After we'd been hanging out for about 2 months, she started getting more possessive. She'd get upset if I hung out with other friends without inviting her, and she began showing up places where she knew I'd be, even when we hadn't made plans. Then I noticed her artwork was getting really intense. She'd draw these elaborate pictures of us together in situations that had never happened, like us at prom, or in wedding clothes, or with kids that were supposed to be ours. She'd write these long poems about our destiny and how we were meant to be together forever. The creepy part was that she'd show these to other people at school like they were normal couple photos. People started asking me when Rachel and I had gotten so serious, because apparently she'd been showing them these fantasy drawings and talking about our relationship like we were practically engaged. When I tried to have a conversation with her about boundaries and how we were just friends, she completely shut down. She said I was being cruel and that she'd been documenting our love story through her art. She had this whole folder of drawings and poems about us that spanned months. She kept insisting that I'd given her signs that we were more than friends, and that her art was just reflecting what was really happening between us. It was like she'd created this whole alternate reality in her head where we were in this deep romantic relationship. Eventually I had to stop talking to her completely because she wouldn't accept that we were just friends. She kept leaving these artistic love letters in my locker with increasingly desperate drawings attached. My guidance counselor finally had to get involved when she started following me around school with a sketch pad, literally drawing me throughout the day. I heard she transferred schools the next year. Really hope she learned the difference between fantasy and reality, because that whole situation taught me to be way more careful about mixed signals. Story 7. This girl in my history class started leaving me these super weird notes and gifts. It started innocent enough, just little compliments written on pieces of paper slipped into my locker. But then it escalated quickly into some really disturbing territory. She began leaving detailed descriptions of dreams she had about us together. I'm talking multiple pages of handwritten fantasies that were way too personal for someone I barely knew. Along with the notes came increasingly strange gifts. A keychain with both our initials, homemade cookies shaped like hearts with our names and icing, and even a hand-knitted scarf in my school colors. The breaking point was when she left a photo collage of me that she had obviously been taking without my knowledge. Pictures of me walking to class, eating lunch, even one that looked like it was taken through my bedroom window. That's when I realized she had been straight up stalking me for weeks. I took everything to the principal and they had to involve the school counselor. Turns out she had some serious boundary issues and needed professional help. They made her transferred to a different lunch period and threatened suspension if she came near me again. Story 8. This is going to sound crazy, but I swear it's all true. There was this girl named Jessica who was known around our campus for being wild at parties. At first, guys thought it was cool because she seemed really into hooking up with random people. But after a while, a disturbing pattern started emerging. She had this system where she'd target guys who were new to campus or didn't know many people. She'd be super friendly, offer to show them around, invite them to exclusive parties. These guys were usually pretty naive and grateful for the attention from an attractive upperclassman. The parties always involved way more drinking than anyone expected. Jessica would make sure the new guy got completely wasted while she stayed relatively sober. Then she'd offer to take care of him for the night. The next morning, the guy would wake up confused and embarrassed, often with no memory of what happened. But here's the really messed up part. Within a week or two, Jessica would contact each guy claiming she was pregnant. She'd demand money for Plan B or for an ultrasound or for taking care of the situation. Since these guys were young and scared and didn't know any better, most of them would scrape together whatever money they could find. I only learned about this pattern because my little brother started college the same year and almost became one of her targets. Thankfully, his roommate warned him about her reputation before anything happened. That's when we started comparing stories with other guys, and we realized she'd been running this same scam for at least 2 years. The most disgusting part was that she never actually got pregnant. She was just exploiting drunk, vulnerable guys and then using their fear and shame to extort money from them. We tried to report her to campus security, but they basically told us there wasn't much they could do without concrete evidence. Eventually word got around enough that fewer guys fell for her tactics, but by then she'd probably made thousands of dollars off this scheme. Last I heard, she'd transferred to a different school, probably to start the whole thing over again with a fresh group of potential victims. It makes me sick thinking about how many guys she hurt and how she faced basically no consequences for any of it. Story 9. This is probably the most messed up thing that's ever happened to me relationship-wise. I was in college, dating this girl for about 8 months. She seemed normal at first, maybe a little clingy, but nothing too crazy. That changed real quick. She had this thing where she'd threaten to take her own life whenever we had any kind of disagreement. Not even big fights, like if I wanted to study instead of hang out, or if I went to a party she wasn't invited to. She'd text me stuff like "I guess I'll just end it all since you don't care about me anymore," and then turn off her phone for hours. The first few times I totally panicked. I'd drive over to her place, call her friends, even contacted her roommate once. She'd always be fine, usually just watching television or doing homework, acting like nothing happened. When I'd bring it up, she'd say she was just really emotional and didn't mean it. But it kept escalating. One night I told her I needed space to focus on finals, and she sent me this long message about how she was going to hurt herself and it would be all my fault. She said she was already holding pills and just needed me to say I didn't love her anymore to go through with it. I was done. Instead of rushing over, I called her mom and told her exactly what was happening. Turns out this wasn't the first time. She'd done this to her high school boyfriend too. Her mom was grateful I called and went over to deal with it. When I broke up with her the next day, she tried the same thing again. This time I told her I was calling campus security and her parents if she kept it up. She got angry and told me I was being dramatic, that she was just upset and would never actually do it. That's when it clicked. If she was really in that dark of a place, she wouldn't be able to just turn it on and off like that. She was using my fear and care for her as a weapon. Completely screwed up. Haven't spoken to her since graduation, but last I heard she was doing fine and dating someone new. Story 10. Met this girl at a house party and we hit it off pretty well. She asked for my number and I gave it to her, thinking maybe we'd hang out sometime. Big mistake. The texts started normal enough, but then they got weird fast. She'd text me things like "just drove past your street" or "saw your car at the grocery store." I hadn't told her where I lived or what I drove. Then she started showing up places where I was. Like, I'd be at a restaurant with friends and she'd just appear and sit down like she was invited. The creepiest part was when she somehow got my work schedule. I work at a tech company and one day she was just sitting in the lobby when I came in. Security had to escort her out because she didn't have a visitor badge and couldn't explain why she was there. She kept insisting we had some deep connection and that I was the one even though we'd literally hung out for maybe 2 hours total at that party. When I tried to explain that I wasn't interested, she'd act like I was just confused and needed time to realize my feelings. Finally, had to get a restraining order when she started leaving things on my doorstep. Haven't heard from her since, but I still get paranoid when I see someone following too close behind me. Really messed with my head for a while. Story 11. This is a long one, but it gets pretty intense. Back in my sophomore year of college, I met this girl through mutual friends at a party. She seemed cool enough. We talked for maybe 20 minutes about random stuff. Nothing romantic, Just casual conversation. But apparently she took it as way more than it was. Within a week, she'd somehow gotten my class schedule and started showing up to my lectures. Keep in mind, we were in completely different majors. She was studying art, I was in engineering. She'd sit a few rows behind me and just stare. When I'd turn around, she'd wave like we were best friends. Then she started inserting herself into my friend group. She'd show up at places where she knew we'd be hanging out, acting like she belonged there. My friends thought it was weird but didn't want to be mean, so they'd include her. She used this as an opportunity to sit next to me, try to finish my sentences, and agree with literally everything I said. The breaking point came when I started dating someone. This girl completely lost it. She'd accidentally bump into my girlfriend around campus, making snide comments about how I deserved someone who really understood me. She even went as far as to tell my girlfriend that I'd been leading her on and that we had some kind of relationship. When my girlfriend confronted me about it, I had to explain the whole situation. Thankfully she believed me, but it put a real strain on our relationship for a while. I finally had to be brutally honest with this girl and tell her that her behavior was inappropriate and scary. She actually cried and said she thought we had a connection from that one conversation at the party. She'd built up this entire fantasy relationship in her head based on 20 minutes of small talk. I felt bad for her, but I also made it clear that she needed to leave me and my girlfriend alone. She backed off after that, but I'd still catch her watching me from across the campus sometime. Really taught me to be more careful about how I interact with people, even in casual settings. Story 12. Met this girl from my college class, and it just wasn't working out. I told her I wasn't interested in anything serious and she seemed cool with it. Or so I thought. A week later she starts liking every single post I've ever made on Instagram. I'm talking going back like 4 years, hitting the heart on random pictures of my lunch from 2019. Then she moved to Facebook and did the same thing. Then Twitter. I blocked her on Instagram and she immediately found me on LinkedIn and started endorsing me for skills I don't even have. LinkedIn. Who uses LinkedIn to stalk someone? But here's the really messed up part. She created fake accounts on every platform just to keep following me. I'd block one account and 2 days later there's a new one with a different name but obviously the same person. She wasn't even trying to hide it, using the same profile picture just cropped differently. I ended up having to make all my social media private and even then she'd try to friend request me through accounts with names like Jessica Smith with no profile picture. Still get random friend requests that I'm pretty sure are her. Some people just can't take a hint. Story 13. I was working at this retail store during college, and this girl who shopped there developed what I can only describe as an obsession with me. It started innocent enough. She'd come in asking for help finding stuff, always requesting me specifically. My manager thought it was cute that I had a customer who liked me, but then she started coming in every single day. Not buying anything, just walking around for hours. My coworkers started joking about my stalker girlfriend, but I wasn't laughing. She somehow found out my schedule and would time her visits perfectly. If I worked mornings, she'd be there right when we opened. Evening shifts, she'd show up an hour before closing and stay until we kicked everyone out. She'd pretend to shop but really she was just watching me work, taking pictures when she thought I wasn't looking. The worst part was when she started bringing me gifts. Homemade cookies, coffee, little notes about how I brightened her day. My manager told me to just be polite because she was a customer, but it was getting really uncomfortable. She knew details about my life that I'd never told her, my class schedule, where I parked my car, even my roommate's name. One day I came into work and my manager pulled me aside. Turns out she'd been calling the store asking about me on my days off, wanting to know when I'd be back, if I was single, if I had mentioned her. She'd even asked if she could leave me a special gift in the employee break room. I started parking in different spots and taking different routes to work. Had to ask to switch my schedule around completely. She caught on and adjusted her visits accordingly. It was like a game to her, and I was losing. Finally had to get my manager involved officially when she started waiting by my car after shifts. Haven't seen her since I quit that job, but sometimes I wonder if she's still going to that store looking for me. Story 14. This was back in college, and I made the mistake of accepting a friend request from this girl in my sociology class. At first her posts were normal, just typical college stuff, but after we talked once after class, her entire social media presence became about me. She'd post photos of places I'd been even though she wasn't with me, like she was following me around campus. She started writing these really long posts about signs from the universe and how we were meant to be together because we both liked the same coffee shop. Then she created this whole photo album called Our Story filled with pictures of me that she'd somehow taken without me knowing, mixed with stock photos of couples and wedding stuff. The captions were written like we were actually dating. The breaking point was when she posted a detailed timeline of my daily schedule with little heart emojis, talking about how she loved watching me grow and being part of my journey. Friends started messaging me asking if we were together because her posts made it seem like we were. I had to get campus security involved when she started leaving gifts outside my dorm room. Nothing dangerous. Just weird personal stuff like homemade cookies with my initials and little notes about how she was taking care of me. She'd somehow figured out my meal plan schedule and would show up wherever I was eating, always sitting a few tables away just staring. The whole situation lasted about 2 months before she finally got the message and backed off. I ended up changing my social media to private and being way more careful about who I accepted requests from. It really opened my eyes to how someone can create an entire fantasy relationship in their head based on basically nothing. Story 15. Dated this girl for about a month before I realized she was way too intense for me. Breaking up with her was like trying to escape quicksand. The more I pulled away, the deeper she dug in. After I ended things, she went full detective mode on my life. Started reaching out to all my friends on social media, not directly asking about me but getting them to talk. She'd comment on their posts, like their pictures, slowly building these relationships. Before I knew it, half my friend group was telling me I should give her another chance because she seemed so sweet. She was feeding them this narrative about how we had this amazing connection and I was just scared of commitment. My friends started inviting her to group hangouts without telling me. I'd show up to what I thought was just hanging with my boys and she'd be there, all smiles and acting like nothing happened. The manipulation was next level. She'd post cryptic stuff on social media about missing someone special with songs that were obviously about me. My friends would see it and feel bad for her. She'd show up to parties I was at, always with some excuse about how she didn't know I'd be there even though my friend definitely told her I was coming. She turned my own social circle into her surveillance network. People were reporting back to her about who I was talking to, where I was going, if I was seeing anyone new. I didn't even realize it was happening until my roommate told me she'd been messaging him asking if I seemed sad lately. Had to basically start hanging out with a completely different group of people just to get away from her influence. Some of my old friends still don't understand why I won't give her another shot. It's crazy how manipulative people can make you look like the bad guy for having boundaries. Story 16. This happened back in high school. There was this girl who I barely knew start following all my social media accounts after graduation. Not weird by itself, lots of people add classmates on Facebook and stuff. But then things got really strange. She started commenting on everything I posted, even old stuff from years before. Like, she'd go through my entire timeline and leave hearts and miss you comments on random photos. When I didn't respond much, she created fake accounts with different names to follow me again. I figured this out because she'd use the same profile picture style and make the same types of comment. Plus, these different people all seemed to know oddly specific details about my life. When I blocked the obvious fake accounts, she'd just make new ones. The creepiest part was when she started copying my posts. If I shared a song, she'd share the same song an hour later with a caption about how it reminded her of someone special. If I posted a photo from somewhere, she'd go to the same place and post similar pictures. She even started messaging my friends, asking them about my relationship status and what I was up to. My buddy showed me screenshots where she was asking really specific questions about my work schedule and living situation. That's when I realized this wasn't just social media weirdness, and she was actively trying to gather information about my life. I ended up having to make all my accounts private and block her from every platform I could think of. Still worried she's out there watching from accounts I don't know about. Story 17. Junior year I needed help with chemistry, so this girl offered to be my study partner. She seemed normal at first, smart, focused on schoolwork, nothing weird about it. We'd meet at the library a couple times a week to go over homework and prep for tests. But gradually, she started getting really possessive about our study time. She'd get genuinely upset if I studied with anyone else or if I had to cancel because of other commitments. She started calling it our time and would get this hurt look if I mentioned hanging out with friends instead. Then she began inserting herself into other parts of my life. She'd show up at my part-time job just to say hi but would stay for hours, making my coworkers uncomfortable. She memorized my work schedule somehow and would bring me coffee every shift, even though I'd told her she didn't need to do that. The worst part was when she started talking to my friends like we were dating. She'd refer to future plans we had made that I definitely hadn't agreed to. My buddy told me she'd asked him what kind of flowers I liked because she was planning something special for my birthday. When I tried to create some distance and suggested we just study in group settings, she completely lost it. Started crying in the library, saying I was abandoning her and that she'd given so much to help me. She accused me of using her for homework help, which honestly made me feel guilty even though I'd never asked her to do all that extra stuff. I ended up having to be pretty direct about boundaries, which was uncomfortable but necessary. She finally backed off, but for a while there I was genuinely worried about how attached she'd gotten to what I thought was just a study partnership. Story 18. Met this girl Amanda through Tinder about 2 years ago. First date went fine, nothing too crazy, just dinner and drinks. But pretty quickly she started showing some really concerning behavior. She'd text me constantly throughout the day, like every 15 minutes, and if I didn't respond immediately she'd send multiple follow-up messages asking if I was okay or if I was mad at her. When I tried to explain I was just busy with work, she'd accuse me of seeing other girls. After only 3 dates, she started talking about moving in together and meeting my family. She'd drive by my apartment at random times and then text me asking who the strange car parked outside belonged to. It was usually just my neighbor's car. The breaking point came when I decided to end things after about a month. I tried to be gentle about it, said we just weren't compatible long term. She seemed to take it okay at first, but then the real crazy started. She began showing up at my workplace during lunch breaks, coincidentally running into me at places I'd mentioned going to, and calling me from different phone numbers when I blocked her original one. She even contacted my ex-girlfriend from college somehow and tried to get information about me. The scariest part was when she started posting on social media about how I'd promised her a future and then abandoned her when she needed me most. She was making it sound like we'd been together for years instead of a few weeks. I had to document everything and threaten legal action before she finally left me alone. Definitely learned to trust my gut about red flags after that experience.